Huntington Beach, how are you doing tonight? So my name is Julian Douglas, and I am part of something extremely special here. If for some reason you have not heard about us, the City Celebration Committee. And if you are unfamiliar, I've got somebody to tell you a little bit more about that. But basically what we're trying to do, and this may sound very far-fetched, find ways to celebrate Huntington Beach. Because, you know, there's not much great about Huntington, right? Yeah. So we do kind of have a very easy committee. So on behalf of the City Celebration Committee, which are all around here someplace, we should just wave City Celebration Committee wherever you are. See, they don't want to, they're so shy. Hi, guys. So one of the men that kind of made this all happen also happens to be Huntington Beach's new mayor. So ladies and gentlemen, please, what an honor this is to introduce Mr. Mayor Casey McKeon. Come on.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So it's obviously an honor to be here. It's an honor to serve as your guys' mayor this upcoming year. Just a local Huntington Beach kid, third generation Huntington Beach resident, and this all started with the celebration committee when my very first city council meeting 3 years ago. We go in the back room in the closed session chamber, and there's this amazing photo in black and white of 1909, the very first city council, which I've never seen before. There's 5 gentlemen. And you could tell cameras weren't that prevalent back then because 3 of them are looking to the left, 2 are looking to the right. There's like a fish net hanging in the corner. And I was like, wow, that's just amazing. And then from there, talking with Chris and Kathy Scher, our archivist, and then really going through all our records and get some amazing photos. I just realized, along with our previous mayor, Pat Burns, and Councilwoman Gracie Vandermark, that we have so much amazing history in this city that even someone like me, a local kid or a third generation resident, just doesn't know about. So we thought it would be fun to do like a celebration calendar of historical events, and we focus on local Huntington Beach, California, national, etc. And then the celebration committee came on board to kind of take the mantle from us, and that was amazing to have the residents have input, get seated, and then come up with great ideas every month to celebrate like a theme, and then we could flow that into events in the city and in the library, etc. Now this year is coming up with 2026, which is a semi-quincentennial, America's 250th birthday, which is going to be amazing. And so the celebration committee just adopted the calendar last week, and it's amazing. If you guys haven't seen it, they'll highlight it, but it's going to be so much fun. Every month is just an ode to America and their 250th birthday and how special that is. And we're going to have a lot of fun events next year in the city. And so just great to be here. Chris Epting is obviously one of a kind and a local treasure story. Yeah. So I'm glad you guys are here. We're excited about it. And I'm going to give this microphone to Patty Pappas, who's one of our celebration committee members, and she'll introduce Chris Epting.
Thank you. Well, we're so happy to have you here. We had Chris here last year, and to another sold-out crowd. Great group, everybody. I want to introduce Chris Epting. We had an opportunity to meet with him and some of the special stars in council before this meeting, and he gave us some of the information. Chris, are you out here? And we gave some of the information, just maybe one of the tales that he's going to talk to you about tonight. And we are going to be having his books, some books for purchase. They're $25, and he's going to be signing some books as well. And Chris, we're excited to have you here. Thank you.
We have a lot to get through tonight, so I want you to settle in and get ready. If you didn't know, Casey McKeon, Mayor McKeon, his father, he's part of Huntington Beach history in that if you know the Beef Palace over at what's called the West Fair Shopping Center, you may know was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright Jr., which is kind of interesting. If you go by the Arco station there, you may know there's sort of looks like a gravestone in the bushes back there. And that gravestone is a marker to something that Frank Lloyd Wright Jr. wanted to erect in 1969, but the locals wouldn't let him do it. He wanted to put a tower there. And the tower is no longer there, but there is a Beef Palace tower, that sign, which is kind of in the same spot. So I guess my point is we are surrounded by history. Some of it you know, some of it you may know tonight, but hopefully there are some things tonight that catch you off guard. Putting this presentation together caught me off guard. I wanted to do something a little bit different, not focus on one thing like the gun club, but really kind of give you a collage of stories that I think are special and interesting, from the sublime to the ridiculous, to things that are painful, to things that are joyous, things that are triumphant, redemptive. There's a whole gamut here tonight, so I'd like to get to it now. And it starts for me with Hidden Huntington Beach. Where's Julie Toledo? Round of applause for Julie Toledo. I've known Julie a long time. I want to acknowledge Mayor Pro Tem Butch Twining is here as well. Butch, where are you? Thank you for coming. But Julie, and I've known Julie a long time, and before COVID, she and I had coffee one day, and she said, you know what, we've got this slot of time we may want to fill. If we said to you, what would you want to do with some TV time, what would you do? And I kicked it around a bit, and we had lunch again, and came up with this thing called Hidden Huntington Beach. This was pre-COVID, and then COVID kicked in and kind of froze everything. But then during COVID, we thought, you know what, let's get people out a little bit, maybe exploring the city, and so that's what we did. And since that's our 6th year now, I think, we've done, upwards 70, I think, episodes. There's a Facebook group with like 25,000 people. This to me, of all the things I've done in Huntington Beach, this to me has been the most productive, the most interesting, because I learn something every day. I mean, this thing, if you haven't looked at the Facebook group, you can search anything. It's like an online museum. There are thousands of posts, thousands of videos and home movies and photos. It really is like an online reliquary, which I'm super proud of. But with that, I want to get into what I was thinking tonight are... We're going to talk tonight about the first of our story. Number one is, for me, one of the most daring feats ever accomplished, and it involves the Bolsa Chica Gun Club, which, if you know about me, I became obsessed with after moving to Huntington Beach in 1989. This was an enclave. When you drive up Coast Highway by Warner and Coast Highway, those palm trees that you see up on the bluff, that's the site. Those trees are in this photo along with the eucalyptus forest. It opened in 1899, but what I'm going to talk about tonight is an event that took place in 1910. December 22nd, the anniversary is coming up, my birthday, interestingly. What happened was, the gun club, if you may know, was comprised of very wealthy industrialists and business people, and they sat around the gun club with a lot of time, a lot of money, and really they could do whatever they wanted. And what they heard about in December was an air show that was taking place not too far away in a place called Dominguez Hills up by Carson. And I'm going to show you a little piece of the air show really quickly that was going on up there. And now, to keep in mind, in 1910, to have an air show is significant. Anybody know what year the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk? 1903. So in just 7 years, you've got an air show happening an hour away from Huntington Beach at that point. And so they hear about this air show, and they decide that they're going to contact somebody there named Hubert Latham. Who is Hubert Latham? Hubert Latham is a dashing, wealthy French aviator who in just a couple of years has made his mark as a teacher, as a pilot, as kind of the Evel Knievel of his era. He, and a really amazing guy. On this particular trip in 1910, he had been on the East Coast a week before the air show in LA, coming up with ideas to show how planes could be used in war later on to drop bombs. He devised a system where he was dropping off bags of flour to show military officials how this could work. But he comes to California, and members of the gun club send him a wire. And they say, you know what? No one's ever shot a bird while piloting a plane. Do you want to be the first man to try and do that? Now, he didn't take this lightly, because at this point, he already owned the record for the fastest plane speed. At that point, 48 miles an hour. He had flown higher than anybody at 1,500 feet. So this was a guy who was up for challenges. He attempted to become, the year before, the very first man to fly across the English Channel. And he didn't make it. I think I have a little bit of a clip here of that. Subsequently, he became the first man to land a plane on water. And that's his plane. His plane was called the Antoinette. And he had it built himself. He designed it himself. He was also very artistic. And there is the Antoinette flying. And that's the plane. There it is in the water as well. He had it rebuilt, he had it brought to the United States, and that's the plane that he had up in Los Angeles when the gun club members challenged him. And he took the bait. Now, what he did is he flew about an hour and a half from Carson, 48 miles an hour. And what you can see here, I love this photo. There's the Bolsa Chica Gun Club circled in upper right. The lower part, that lower square, that's where Jack in the Box is today. If you know up Coast Highway in Warner, just to orient where we are. Now, what he's going to do, he's going to fly down and land on that lawn in front of the gun club, that beautiful emerald green lawn. Now, those arrows that you see going up and down, that's the route he's going to fly over today, Bolsa Chica State Beach, to attempt to shoot a bird or two, first man ever to do it. He lands on the lawn, they give him his shotgun, they give him the rules, and off he goes. And within about 12 minutes, he does it. That's the only known photo of Hubert Latham piloting the Antoinette in pursuit of ducks above the surf near Bolsa Chica. This becomes a national sensation because he actually does it while smoking a cigarette. This guy did everything with style. Hubert Latham, really, in researching these things, you look at the headlines, aviator defeats birds in a race. I mean, the country loved this. The first duck killed from skycraft, like monster falcon, monoplane sets foul, flying in terror, and aviator drops one with 2020. This was a really big deal. It brought a lot of attention and focus to Huntington Beach when he did this. Now, after he shoots not one but two blue-billed ducks, the gun club members collect the ducks. He re-lands his plane on the lawn in front of the gun club. They fix him one of the ducks for lunch, and he takes the other duck back with him, which in turn ends up in Paris at his family estate, a lot of money, where today it remains stuffed in the family estate. For the last 4 years, I have been email negotiating, seriously, with the family to bring the duck back to Huntington Beach. And if it's the last thing I do, that duck will be back in Huntington Beach. I'm really tenacious with this stuff. There is a statue in honor of the great Hubert Latham in France today, just outside of Paris. He died tragically at 28 years old, a year after what he accomplished in Huntington Beach. He was in Africa, and he was gored by a wild buffalo. This guy was always pushing the envelope. So that's in honor of Hubert Latham. I want to give you a little bit of, if you went to the gun club today, this is exactly what's there today. If you ever hike out there, do some bird watching, you can see how we've kind of isolated where the gun club used to be. And if you've taken walking tours with me out there, you know we can find pieces of sidewalk and little remnants of the concrete footprint that's still there. So that is story number one for you tonight. We only have 9 more to go. Number 2, the origins of night baseball. And this one's a little bit random. Before I get into it, though, I want to make a special acknowledgement to Jeff Kent, who you may have heard this week is being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2026. Edison High School graduate, 1986. Very first Huntington Beach student to make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. What people don't know, he was kicked off his senior team for disciplinary action and went and played American Legion ball before going up to Berkeley, where his career really takes off. But nevertheless, it's a huge deal to have a Baseball Hall of Famer, high school graduate from Huntington Beach, a very big deal. But getting to some other baseball history here, baseball has always played a big part in Huntington Beach. If you go back to 120 years ago, there was a thing called a Merchants League, where people they would be sponsored by local businesses. There you see on the left, if you ever notice, if you follow the Hidden Huntington Beach thing, you know, there are certain sidewalks downtown, 3 initials, J-E-B, in certain sidewalks. If you see J.E. Brunton off to the left there, he was the cement guy, the contractor, who would put his initials in all the sidewalks. You can see Ed Manning's plumbing company. These were highly competitive merchant leagues where companies would play other company teams. So what gets us to night baseball? Night baseball starts in the major leagues in 1935, Crosley Field in Cincinnati. The very first night game, Franklin Roosevelt flipped the switch from the White House, which turned the lights on for this game. But how does that affect Huntington Beach? Before Major League Baseball ever got to night baseball, it existed. The first night baseball game was played in 1880 in Massachusetts. And that's a year after Edison had created what we know today as the light bulb. So people were thinking night baseball for a long time. Why? In a lot of cases during the week, people couldn't go to games because they worked. So at nighttime, anybody could go, and they would rack up kind of temporary lights. And over the years into the early 1900s, you had the Negro Leagues playing games like this, and Orange County had a night baseball league, and the best team in that league was Huntington Beach. Okay? I love the headline, "A Bad Bunch to Meet on a Dark and Stormy Night." And there you have your Huntington Beach night baseball team. The league was comprised in Orange County, and again, a highly competitive league. You had teams in Santa Ana, Westminster, a town called Olive, which is no longer, today it was made part of Orange a number of years ago, Anaheim, Fullerton, Huntington Beach, Torrance, and Whittier, thus forming a highly competitive night baseball league. Where did they play night baseball in Huntington Beach? Again, no lights were ever erected. They were brought in on trucks temporarily. And there were two main parks where this took place. The first, as you can see here, is a ballpark right along what was then called Ocean Avenue. As you can see, now to orient you, you can see the pier bottom right. We're going to move up a little bit, and there's the baseball field. Now, home plate was to the right, kind of closest to the ocean, and the field extended inland. And I'll show you another image here as well, kind of a reverse angle that shows you exactly where the baseball diamond was. If you know where Pacific City is today, that's where night baseball was played, and other baseball as well. Now, the other field where it took place, I don't have a picture of it. I don't think one exists, but it was bordered by Knoxville, Huntington, Joliet, and California. Now, I don't know where home plate was situated, but that is the block where not just night baseball was played, but something else. And this to me is really, really kind of the kicker to all of this. Huntington Beach can't find any serious competition in the National Night League, so the Oilers are going to play their own firemen on donkeys. If you've never heard about, I love baseball. I've written a number of baseball history books. Donkey baseball in the 1920s and 30s was a very popular thing. It was a thing. And it existed in Huntington Beach, over by Joliet, Huntington, and that field I showed you. Donkey baseball is packing them in all over the country. All players but the batter, pitcher, and catchers are astride the animals. As soon as he hits the ball, the batter has to climb on his donkey and try and reach base before the ball is fielded. See the game of baseball played on donkeys. If you don't believe me, here's a little example of donkey baseball. This is not in Huntington Beach, by the way. So next time, can you believe this? I was writing a book about 10 years ago with John Oates from Hall & Oates. And I was backstage with John at a Hall & Oates show. John's a big baseball fan. And Daryl Hall came in. And John said, "Were you a baseball fan?" And Daryl said, "I hate baseball." Because all I loved as a kid outside of Philly was a thing called donkey baseball. So again, it had its fans back then. It was very popular. And now you know where it was played in Huntington Beach. Again, to go back to where the field used to be, by the 1940s, the ball field was gone, replaced by an auto park where you could go rent a room, park your car, pull right up, like a little motor court there that you see in the square. And today, it's Pacific City. So again, my goal is always when you pass these places today and you know what used to be there, you reimagine, you re-envision what Huntington Beach used to be like. Our next story, the rise of boxing, 1920s Huntington Beach. In the 1920s, Huntington Beach was a hotbed of boxing. Why is that? In large part because, well, A, the city could make money on it, but before that, when the oil strike happened in 1920, what did it bring to the city? A lot of young, strong guys who had money in their pocket all of a sudden, and they would support boxing. So all of a sudden, you had not one, but 2, 3 boxing gyms around the city. Here you've got the Huntington Beach Athletic Club, Old City Garage. I'm going to show you where that is in a minute. But every week you would have these lineups of all weight classes in Huntington Beach. I mean, big fights too. You can see Mexican faces Biss at Oil City Arena. Burly middleweights head opening tonight in Huntington Beach. Now, the athletic club where most of the boxing took place, that's what it is today. There was another place at 403 Alabama Avenue. This one to me is kind of weird, why it would be off of Main Street, but that's the location today of where you could see boxing. Every night, all throughout the city, all through the 1920s, pretty much up until the Depression when things shifted and that money wasn't there anymore. So there are three pieces to my boxing story tonight. That's the first piece. Piece two has to do with a guy named George Latka. George Latka, from the Midwest, was a decent career fighter, 26, 7, and 9. He was a lightweight, 3 knockouts. He fought from 1937 to 1942. After retiring as a fighter, he became a boxing referee. So good that he was put in the Boxing Hall of Fame. He's the only man in the Boxing Hall of Fame in 2 different things, as a fighter and as a referee. And he refed some of the biggest fights of all time. You can see him here in a Sugar Ray Robinson fight. But then, if you ever saw the movie Raging Bull, I'll show you here. Here we see a scene with De Niro as Jake LaMotta. He's the ref in the fight. Martin Scorsese cast him. So he would also appear in movies because he was that good. He was that authentic. After this, in 1975, he opens a place called Latka's Golden Gloves Tavern. Anybody ever go there? You did, remember? Did you ever see George Latka there? Do you remember? He would hang out there. It was right on Warner near Bolsa Chica. That's the building today where that side place is. That's the actual structure where his place was. And he is laid to rest. He never left Huntington Beach. He's at Good Shepherd Cemetery today, a boxing legend. And that's leg 2 of our boxing story. And now we get to I think my favorite. This one is just crazy. This is one of my all-time favorite buildings in Huntington Beach. It's the Huntington Inn, built in 1905 as a beach resort luxury hotel, built by the Huntington Beach Company to lure investors to the city. And it was a very popular place, and I got a couple of other images of it here. Just a stunning, stunning building. There you see it off to the right. I love this picture. I mean, look at this. This is about 1925. Look what oil has done to the city after 19. Now, in the red box there, you can see a red car. That's the train heading along the bluff, and the Huntington Inn is just there to the right. But this is one of my all-time favorite pictures. The Huntington Inn also featured Jane Mansfield, 1959, when she was the Grand Marshal of the parade. They hosted the party at the Huntington Inn. And here's another image of it. So why am I showing you all of these pictures of the Huntington Inn? It has to do with a fighter named Tommy Burns, very famous Canadian heavyweight from 1906 to 1908, 47, 5, and 8, featuring 35 knockouts. 5'7", the shortest heavyweight champ ever. His thing was, he always said he didn't rely on strength as much as he did quickness. That's how he won his fights. He was a hockey player in Canada, so the quickness and agility is what he incorporated into his fighting. I'm going to show you a clip here. This is July 4th, 1907. It's one of the quickest knockouts in boxing history, and you can see him there. This is a piece of the first round up in Northern California. And here's the knockout. Tommy Burns beating, that's Bill Squires, an Australian that he knocked out there. I mean, classic footage. Anyway, so why am I talking to you about Mr. Burns? What Mr. Burns does, he's invited to Huntington Beach in 1917 to judge a beauty pageant. He comes down, he judges the pageant on the pier, and he falls in love with Huntington Beach. And he's thinking to himself about this idea that he's had. He's a health freak, and he wants to create sort of an early version health spa where you can go and reinvigorate and rejuvenate. So he buys the Huntington Inn, the pictures of the building I was showing you, and he turns it into his own health hotel. Now, to give you an idea of how far ahead he was of things, generally considered the first sort of health place like this is what Jack LaLanne did in 1939 up in Oakland. But this predates that by a number of years. And it was popular for a couple of years. You can see, In Search of Health and an Even Climate, then come to Huntington Beach. And you can see the sign on there that says, Huntington Beach's Tommy Burns' health camp. And he ran this here in Huntington Beach for about 3 years. And as he said, I have lived and traveled in all the civilized countries of the world, and I find Huntington Beach has the ideal climate for health building. Tommy Burns. This would be akin to Mike Tyson coming down, buying a hotel, and doing this today. He was a very big deal of his time. And he's there for about 3 years or so, and then he sells it to another boxer, and he moves on with his life. But what happens to the Huntington Inn? Anybody know where this was today? I will show you. Right there at 8th Street. It's a little different today, isn't it? Again, when you drive by tonight or tomorrow, think about this. Think about what used to sit there and what took place there. What happened when Tommy Burns ran that site as one of the world's very first health farms right here in Huntington Beach. Just amazing. Next, we move on. Story number 4. The mysterious wave machine of the early 1900s. Somebody, a local in Huntington Beach, had an idea in 1908 that ocean waves could generate electricity. This idea of renewable, sustainable energy was a real cutting-edge thought, more than 100 years ago. And he's developed a thing called a wave motor. Now, to create, a wave motor, to have it work, they had to create another pier. They couldn't use the Huntington Beach Pier. So they literally were going to build another pier 500 feet long, 20 feet wide, at the foot of 21st Street in Huntington Beach. And it was the California Wave Motor Company. That was the name of the company. And here's a little description about, how this thing was going to work. Flappers swing as waves wash in and out. Again, they're going to capture the waves and have that generate electricity. That's the idea. It's going to be managed by pumping water into a tank, releasing it into a Pelton wheel, and this was the company that was building all of the Reynolds wave motor, and those are the inventors. And Alva Reynolds on the left there, he was the Huntington Beach resident who put this all into play. Here's a photo of the pier they built out there at 21st Street, and picture of the interior of it. It didn't really work. It was there for about 3 years. All it did was it generated electricity, but enough to make a light bulb come on for a couple of seconds. That was really it. But what you can see there, that's the pier that they built. You see this pier turn up in photos later on. Because see all the oil wells that are now there? They began using the pier for their own kind of offshore usage. There's another image of it. And then finally we can see the pier kind of fading away by the 1940s. But it's another ingenious idea that you may not be aware of. When you cross 21st Street, just think about the ingenuity. What was happening there in 1909? It really is, I think, a very fascinating chapter in HB history. One of my favorites at number 5, honoring a famous four-legged veteran. Major von Luckner III. He was a German shepherd who served in the Marine Corps during World War II, credited with saving 9 lives in the Pacific Theater, awarded a Purple Heart with 2 clusters and a Silver Star, wounded 3 times, sustaining a silver plate in his head from a wartime injury. He lived to be 20, and he died in 1961, the year I was born. He's interred at Seabreeze Pet Memorial Park. Seabreeze opened that same year, 1961, and when he was buried there, he was given a full military burial. 12-gun salute, the works. This was a real hero. That's a postcard the year that Seabreeze opened up. And if you go there today and you go in the office, you can see all of his things. You can see the flag that was laid on his casket originally. You can see his leash, his dog tags, the medals he received. All of his artifacts are there in a little, his name was Old Sarge. That was his nickname. And there's a shrine and a little museum dedicated to Old Sarge there. And if you go, when you pull in there today, there's a statue dedicated to him as well. Now, he's not buried at the statue. About 15 feet away from there, you can find his actual grave there at Seabreeze. Anybody there have a pet at that cemetery? There are a lot of famous pets there. The Carpenter's pets, John Wayne, Jose Feliciano. I don't know why his are there, but it's an interesting place with a lot of history. And again, if you ever want to pay respects, especially on Veterans Day, Major von Luckner III is certainly a good place to start. The mysterious tragedy of 1943. Sometimes when you write a lot about history and you document things, and people kind of know you for that, then they think about you when they have an idea, something they want to draw attention to. And so they'll reach out to you. And I got a call, it's almost 10 years ago, I think it was in 2016, by a woman named Maria Young. And she said, I have a story I would love to tell you, and maybe you can help with an idea I have. And I said, sure. We met for a cup of coffee, and she told me about something I had never heard of that sort of blew my mind. And what the story was, it was about her mom. Her mom's name was Vera. She was still alive then. And she told me about her mom in 1943. They lived in Huntington Beach, Mexican-American family. And one day, her mom's family and some family and friends were going to go to the beach, spend a day at the beach in June. And Vera was going to go, I think she was 10 years old, her mom at that point. But she decided to stay back and tend to her grandmother who was blind. And you couldn't write this in the script. So she doesn't go to the beach that day. And Maria tells me the rest of her mom's family goes. They get to the beach, and the fathers realize that everyone's hungry. We're going to get some food. They leave their wives and kids at the beach to go get food. When they come back to the beach, something horrific has happened. A plane has crashed, killing two of Vera's sisters, horrifically maiming two of her brothers, and killing four children were killed. More than 50 people were seriously injured. Now, I didn't know about this, so I started doing some research, and what was weird about it was you couldn't find much on it. I learned why afterwards. But here you can see 4 dead as a result of P-38 crash on the beach, and that's what a P-38 looked like. And went to meet Vera, her mom, and they lived at the mobile home park right at Newland and Coast Highway, facing the beach. And I went there, and we had lunch one day, and Vera was telling me about that day. And I said, where did it happen? She goes, it was down like where the Newport Bridge is. That's kind of where the beach was. And she described what happened and just what it did to her life. And it was really a very, very compelling story. And I said to Maria, like, what can I do? What are you thinking about? Maria had become aware that about a year or two earlier, I had helped spearhead a project to have a marker created for a girl named Robin Samso, who in 1979, was horrible story. She was abducted in 1979. Her death was really the trigger that allowed them to capture the serial killer who had killed, we don't even know how many people today. But anyhow, she had followed in the press, so I had sort of helped with this plaque thing. In fact, there's a picture. That's the day, if you ever go to the pier, the reason that plaque is there is because of what we did. That's Robin's sister on the right and her mom on the left, and that's the day we unveiled the marker. And if you go to that marker, has anybody ever seen the marker before? Look really closely. She loved the beach, and the last photo that was ever taken of her was about 10 feet away from that plaque. And there's a little light in the marker that never goes off. There's a lighthouse, and the light at the top, the beacon in the lighthouse, and the city was very cool about it. We were talking about, could we do this? There was no power. They actually ran power. If you look, there's a cable just for that plaque that will never go off. Anyhow, Maria said, I was thinking maybe we watched you help get this plaque done. Could we get a plaque made for the plane crash? And I said, well, I'm no expert. I said, all I did was the family was, the Samsos were too, I don't want to say shy, but they didn't feel comfortable. They liked the idea, but they didn't feel comfortable going to city council and speaking in public comment. So I went and did it for them. Maria said, my family's the same way. We could never do it. I said, well, then let's do the same thing. And then we all went to city council. That's us the night that we did it. That's me in the middle. That's Vera, who lost her siblings there to the left, to my right. And we all went down there, and I spoke, public comments, and council was great. Everybody, how could you not rally around this? So thus, a little task force was created, and I want to show you, these are what P-38s were like back then. Now, the issue was Maria wanted a plaque placed where the crash happened. So I reached out to a friend of mine. There is a really special guy named Pat Maka. I don't know if anybody knows him. Pat's not a pilot, but he loves aviation, and he's a historian. And what Pat has done for a large part of his life is he finds military crash sites, and he brings families to the crash sites so they can stand at the site where their loved ones perished. He's done this dozens. I've written about, I've gone on missions with him into the mountains where we bring family members. And I called Pat and I said, look, I can't find anything on this P-38 crash. I'm trying to get a location. He goes, let me work on it. He called me, he goes, this one's kind of tough. He goes, I'm going to file some Freedom of Information Act. He goes, there's something blocking this. Well, he gets back to me and he goes, I found it. I have the exact location where it took place. And I said, it's down by Newport, right? He goes, no. He goes, it's right at Newland. And Vera, the family didn't know that every day they were looking at the site right in front of them. I went back there one day and I said, Vera, you've never left, the space is right here. I get goosebumps thinking about it. So I said, let's kind of make this a project. So what I'm going to show you now, these are the only, what happened was a pilot took off from the Santa Ana Air Force Base, which basically where the OC Fair is today. It was a squadron of P-38s. He lost an engine and he ditched, which you're not supposed to do, as it turned out back then. But he ditched the plane. He parachutes into a strawberry patch, which is basically at Gothard and Heil, and sends the plane off into the ocean. But what happens is once the plane gets out, down one engine, it forces it into a U-turn, and that's what pushes it back to the beach where it crashes. So what we have then is the military is aware of this. They don't want this story to get out. So they are on the scene almost instantly from Santa Ana. They take cameras away from people. This was sort of a cover-up, as it turns out. The more Pat filed these information acts, he learned. But what we're going to see now is what he did uncover. That's the impact site the day of the crash at the beach. And what's really crazy is, if you ever heard of Bud Higgins is a real legendary HP pioneer. He developed the lifeguard program and a million other things in the city. He was on the pier that day with his teenage lifeguards. They became the first responders. So you've got a plane crash, you've got burning bodies, and a bunch of teenagers that are saving lives on the beach. It's just an incredible scene. This is a picture from the pier area, and you can see the explosion at left. So this is just utter chaos, what's going on. And here's, this is a letter from Gene Fair. He was the pilot. And I don't know if you can read it, but he describes what happened at 4,500 feet. He describes what happened and how he had a ditch. And, you know, it was, by all accounts, this was a really good pilot. This was not his fault. The family all forgave him. The families, I think, were paid $2,000 each by the military for this. And they had to sign everything away to never approach for any more money. Again, this was, in my view, not the military's greatest moment. And I say that as somebody who is very pro-military, but this was, you know, during wartime, it's a very sensitive time in our country's history. This is just 2 years after Pearl Harbor. It's, you know, they didn't want this. This was like an attack on our own shores, in effect, where you got 4 children killed. But anyhow, this is an image of the pilot. And then the other thing that Pat uncovered that I found interesting was this. This is a review, not written by the pilot, but somebody who was kind of assessing the damage. And they talk about the fact that these children were taken to the office of Dr. Lawrence P. Whitaker, 302 3rd Street. I see addresses I've always got to track down. Is it there today? Am I passing this place not knowing? This is it. This is the location today. That was the doctor's office off of 3rd Street. You may know the building. And again, I pass a place like that and I think, what was it like in June of 1943 when these victims, these by the dozens, were brought to this doctor, and this doctor is in there saving lives on this just absolutely cataclysmic day. Fast forward to about a year after we all start talking, and there we are. At the home, that's the space where Vera's family lived at that time at Newland. That's then Mayor Del Glaze, who was very instrumental in helping with this. My dear friend John Morlock. John, are you here tonight by any chance? Then state senator and a great historian. He helped make this real. That's Pat Maka on the right there. And that's the plaque you can see. That's Maria on the left, the daughter, and Vera is holding up the plaque. And there we see the plaque that we had made. And here is the exact location where the plane hit. When you drive by Newland now, you've got a reference or something. We did an episode of Hidden Huntington Beach, bringing the plaque out there. The plaque has still not been placed. It is State Beach. I have learned more about State Beach red tape in the last 5 years. I could write a book about that. But I did want to place it at least that day on the sand where it happened, so at least we know it's going to live there at some point. My thing is, I don't just want the plaque placed. I want there to be a kiosk that talks about all the things I'm telling you right now with these images, with these letters. I think people should be able to see that. And while they're there, they can also, if we accomplish this, see what's part of our next story, which is story 7, called The Mysterious Fire. And this involves a place that was called, to have been called, the Pacific Beach Club. And this is an interesting place. This was to have been an all-black beach resort that was going to open in the mid-1920s. And look, I could do a whole talk on this. A good friend of mine, a historian and archivist named Chris Epting, HB Local, he's done a ton of legwork on this story. And what I'm sharing is really via him. We did a whole episode about this that you can watch with Chris and I out there talking about it. It's at Newland. It's at the same spot where the plane would crash years later. But what this was it was going to open in 1926, but in January, a week before it opened, something happened, burned to the ground. And to this day, nobody really, there's a number of theories I'll go into in a minute about what happened here. But the story of it is really interesting. It was actually put together by a white developer, a guy named Hal Clark, who came down from LA, and he thought it would be a good business idea. You have to remember, like up in LA, there were segregated beaches. You know, this is Jim Crow era. Orange County didn't really have that because, honestly, there weren't enough black people in Orange County to warrant regulations. It wasn't like LA. So this was going to be really a bold idea, and it wasn't Huntington Beach yet. This was still unincorporated, the area, down by Newland. So it's, Huntington Beach adjacent. And what happens is he comes down. This place is going to be 7 acres long. I mean, really something you can see in the picture I showed you already. Just a very elaborate place with camping and beautiful facilities and banquet facilities and everything. And a couple of months before it's supposed to open, they come down and they hold beauty pageants. They're trying to get interest so people can invest in it. This is the man, that's Hal Clark right there. And what he does, he puts a board together of very prominent black politicians, doctors, scientists who all invest in the Pacific Beach Club. And they're basically buying stock into it. But again, something happens and there is this fire. There are very few images of it. That's one of them right there. This is another one of the beauty pageant pictures, a little bit out of sequence here in 1925, where they were really on their way to creating something very substantial that would have been unlike anything else in the United States in terms of a place that was this large, that was exclusively a black beach resort. And there you see another image of what it would have looked like. And they were modeling parts of it back then. If you know, like the Egyptian theater in Los Angeles, that style was very popular. That kind of, ancient sort of looking. And so a lot of the buildings, the Pacific Beach Club, modeled after that. And again, it never happened, but there you see that green illustrates where it would have been. Now, in terms of likely suspects, there's a number of them. I mean, obviously, at that time, there were people who didn't want this place built. There were people in Huntington Beach who didn't want it built. There was in Orange County at that time an issue with the KKK, primarily in Anaheim, but in various cities too, including Huntington Beach. And when we say KKK, it's a little bit different than what we think of as the Southern style. I'm not going to go into a whole thing about that, but it was really, the version out here was very anti-Catholic. It was sort of a Protestant-driven thing, but also they had no love for minorities. And there is a thought that somebody from that group may have torched it. The Pacific Electric Railroad was not fond of it either. And there's a thought that they might have done it. There's also a theory that Hal Clark himself might have done it for insurance purposes because he wasn't selling enough he felt, to potentially make it stable. Now, he did pay back. Every black investor got their investment back with interest after the fact. They tried to build it again in a year or two, but the Depression hit and the idea really went away. But again, next time you drive down Coast Highway by Newland, think about what took place there in the 20s and then 20 years later with that plane crash. That area, to me, I feel, to me, the air is charged differently there. It really is something palpable that you feel when you drive through it. So on to story 8. How am I doing on time? Oh, not too bad. Liberty Park. Who's heard of Liberty Park? Just by show of hands. When I say Liberty Park, what do you think?
Well, where my aunt used to live.
Liberty Park was part of Huntington Beach. Yeah, Huntington Beach had these little townships, Wintersburg, Smeltzer, Liberty Park. They would eventually become part of Huntington Beach. Back in the 20s and 30s, they were kind of trying to make it on their own. And there's something about Liberty Park that I think is fascinating that I want to tell you. A couple of things, actually. This is a photo one of our members on Hidden Huntington Beach shared it, of her family and their feed store on Highway 39, aka Beach Boulevard today, in Liberty Park back in the 1930s. Now, if you look, you can still see some names today that jump out. Spear Drive, Liberty Drive there in the middle, the Beach Boulevard there on the right. It's kind of near Talbert, kind of near Slater in that area. That was Liberty Park. Now, in this area where that star is, was one of my absolute favorite buildings to ever stand on Huntington Beach, and one that you don't see that much. It was called the Caro Art Craft Building. Later, the Courts Party House. It was sort of a dance hall. Very, very interesting architecture, very much of the day. A little Spanish, little mission, kind of a compendium of a lot of different styles. And that sat right on Beach Boulevard into the late 1930s. To give you an idea of exactly where it was, there's a photo, I love this picture, where you can see it there on the left in the square. Now pay attention, see the Texaco station? I'm going to orient you. This is about 1935, and you'll see exactly where we are right now. Slightly different. Again, the Texaco station is Wiener Schnitzel today. Jack in the Box. I do everything by lining up fast food places. But that gives you an idea of just, again, you drive Beach Boulevard, now you know it was very different. But that's not the part about Liberty Park that I think is so special. The part to me that makes it so special is regarding a resident at Liberty Park, a man whose name was Marion Spear. Marion Spear was born in Texas. He was a geology student, an oil man. He moves to the area, becomes part of the Huntington Beach oil boom in 1920, but he's a collector of Western artifacts, arrowheads, all kinds of Native American artifacts, all kinds of rocks, specimens. He began collecting thousands of these things in the 1930s, and he gave it a name, the Western Trails Museum, at his house. And this became a tourist stop for people all over the world. He would allow them to come in. By the 1940s, schools began visiting his house regularly to look at his collection of more than 30,000 artifacts. By the 1950s, it's getting kind of crowded in the house, and he's developed a friendship with Walter Knott. He loves what Walter Knott has done with the ghost town at Knott's Berry Farm, and they strike a deal. And what that deal is he's going to donate everything from his house to Walter Knott. And if you've been to Knott's Berry Farm and you've been in the Western Trails Museum, everything in there once lived in Huntington Beach at the home of Marion Spear. You can see it today, the Western Trails Museum. Everything was predicated, and this is the site of the house on Spear Drive, named for him. That's not the original house, but that's the location where the Western Trails Museum was. And again, you see it today, and you can see this Spear Drive up there named for him. And it really is something that I think, again, if you know the street, now you know why it's named that. And next time you go to Knott's Berry Farm, now you know the provenance of where all those things came from. Number 9, the legacy of a racetrack. Huntington Beach in 1946 became home to a racetrack. It was built by Tom Talbert. If you know, Talbert, again, one of the great pioneers. Tom Talbert in Huntington Beach, moves here in the late 1800s. He is going to found a city called Fountain Valley in the late 1800s. But back then, you couldn't have a post office with a name that had 2 names. So the name Talbert. It was called Talbert to the 50s. That's when it became Fountain Valley. Tom Talbert, of course, built the bridge that you see today where the gun club used to be. He just was a man of many trades, and including building this racetrack in 1946, primarily at the beginning for midget auto races. Do you know what those were? I know it sounds politically incorrect today, but it wasn't about the people, it was about the size of the car. It was very small, very light, very powerful cars. Many race car drivers got their start in midget racing. Mario Andretti, Jackie Stewart, they all started as midget car drivers. And the idea was to mimic a racetrack that was called Gilmore Field up in Los Angeles by the Farmers Market that the Gilmore family owned. And they built this track. Here we can see it being built. It was going to house 17,000 fans at full capacity, and it was there from 1946 to 1958. I love this photo. This photo, there's a lot going on. You can see, to orient you, that's Beach Boulevard just above the track, and that's Atlanta at left coming down perpendicular. And you can see some oil wells. Look at the squadron of planes flying off on the left there. This is just a spectacular photo that gives you an idea of what it's like. And here we see one of the midget racers. This image gives you a good idea of what the layout was like. You can see where Atlanta runs there. You can see the track at, nearing capacity. Oil wells, a forest of oil wells off in the distance there at left. Beach Boulevard to right. The Newland House up there in the distance at upper right. And as the years went on, you can see in great aerial shots in the 40s and 50s, the track is very prominent where it's at. And even after it closed down, this image is from the 1970s, you can still see the scar of the track, 20 years after it shut down. And there's the scar as well. After the mobile home park came in, you can see the Sheridan there, the driftwood is there. This is just a classic photo from the 1970s. And if we go again, picture that right now, and we did an episode on the track there, and these are places to me where I have this sort of concept or this vision where there should be a plaque program and an audio component where wherever you go, if you want to stop and learn about these places at that location with video and audio. I'm going to give you we discovered through one of the wonderful members on Hidden Huntington Beach, Aaron, he came up with what we think is the only known footage of the racetrack. There's about 7 minutes of it. Here's just a minute to give you an idea of what it was like there on a quiet day. But look at the oil derricks. Imagine if they had kept this. I think this would be viable today. I really do.
That's got to be in the 30s, right?
Pardon?
That's the 30s.
Yeah. Well, no, this would be, it opened in 46. Do you recognize the cars?
I think pre-major.
Yeah. Well, it might be 46 when it opened, because to me it doesn't look totally finished either. Like the complex itself doesn't look totally done. But that's the racetrack history. And now on to story number 10. So bizarre. Casablanca's connection to Huntington Beach. It's thin, but it's still something I think kind of important. And it starts at the Surf Theater, which I'm sure some of you went to, right? Just by show of hands. Yeah, Surf Theater's like all time. It opens in 1925, and for silent films. It was called Scott's Theater originally. They became the Roxy. I think it's called the Surf starting in 1941. We see another great image of it here. That's Tom Talbert's house off to the left, which would be on Coast Highway, but a very popular place. And so Hal Wallace was the producer of Casablanca and many other really famous films. I think 19 of his films were nominated for Best Picture over the course of his career, and this one, of course, won in 1944. But in 1942, he knows he's producing something really special and really spectacular. And he hasn't taken it. Back then, I think they probably still do it today. Sometimes producers would take a film that wasn't even totally finished and they would run it out of town, or in a small town, kind of like when they say there's a play in Peoria, to get sort of a small town reaction. Are they missing anything? And Wallace decides to do one out of town screening with the first cut of the film. And he chooses Huntington Beach, the Surf Theater. And so executives from Warner Brothers come down and they're going to monitor the audience reaction. And Wallace is expecting this thing to just kill, because everybody at the studio, they know they've got lightning in a bottle. This film is just, everyone knows it's an instant classic, except for the people in Huntington Beach that saw it, who didn't like the title, who didn't like the casting, but perhaps most egregiously didn't like the ending. And what the screeners were hearing afterwards is the locals wanted her to go with Bogart. I mean, you know the ending where where Bogart leaves. They hated that. And they report back to Hal Wallace and say, look, these people in Huntington Beach, they don't like it. They don't get it. They think you should change this. And Wallace is like, you gotta be kidding me, you know? And he says, no. I believe in this picture. It's kind of scared him that maybe Huntington Beach was onto something. But he stuck to his guns. The picture was unchanged, despite the fact that locals here were not quite buying it. The Surf Theater exists for another 45 years after that film. There it is in its last day, 1989. This picture is really dramatic when you think about it. You're looking at the Terry family's Buick right across the street there on 5th. And like, where are these seats today? Does he? Oh my God, I'm going to call him when I get home tonight. But then you can look across and see what buildings still exist there. The police, you know, the police station in the corner. It's really amazing what we see here, and to kind of line up, classic surf shot. If you're over there on 5th Street today or tomorrow, that's what we're talking about. Very different. We need to watch just a little minute here. Oh, I don't know if there's sound on this. Oh, we don't have sound. I'm sorry. This is my favorite movie of all time, by the way. I just think this is an absolute classic. The fact that they brought it to Huntington Beach before anybody else in the world saw it, to me, is just something so special. So that's what I had for you. Originally, this is what I had for you tonight, and I finished my presentation. And I was sitting at home, and I just felt unsettled, like there was a little bit more. So if you would indulge me for like 5 more minutes. I could do this all night. I honestly, like if we came back next week, I could do another 10, another 10. These things to me are so integral, whether you grew up here or not. This idea that the places you pass every day, I hope, helps you reconfigure, rethink what used to be there. Which gets us to the Devil's Torch, June 1949. There was a lot of oil in Huntington Beach. There would be an occasional issue, conflagration, a little fire, but nothing like what happened in June, I think it was June 15th, 1949, where a well explodes. We're talking flames that burn 4 days, 300 feet into the sky, visible for 25 miles. On Catalina, they saw this. You could see it. This was absolute out of control mayhem, and they didn't know what to do to stop it. This was total chaos, and I'm going to show you exactly where it is. It's really kind of interesting because what they did, one of the guys on the crew on day 3 said, I have a crazy idea. We're open to anything. He says, let's tap into the oil piping and run seawater into it, and that's what put this thing out. Absolutely ingenious. So the next time you're on, look at that picture right there. I mean, think about the heat coming off of those flames. You're seeing a football field high of flame. And that exact location today is right there. Right by Golden, right where the flag is. You know, again, to me, wouldn't it be cool to have a marker there it looks so, this is like one of the postcard spots in Huntington Beach. You turn around, that view of the pier, it's just the right distance. Everything is perfect at that spot. But when you go back to 1949, it just puts things in perspective. It reminds you of where the city came from, of what it's been through, of these layers of history, of what oil was like. Look at the wells up there. Imagine how different that was back there. And today you have this. So I have one other story to share, and it's entitled Denny's Cactus Garden. I was given a map. David Lessard, I don't know if you're here. David was kind enough to give me a map years ago, a 1938 tourist map of Huntington Beach. And there you have it. And it's a beautiful map, and you can look at it and see, there's, what do we see on it? The Camera Clubhouse, Broom Factory, Tile Factory. Huntington Beach was a factory town back in the day, if you didn't know. Boy Scout cabin. But then in the upper right, I saw a thing that said Denny's Cactus Garden. Oh, that's kind of weird. And it was located right by the high school. And so I began reading about this guy named Sherman Denny, rather. And Sherman Denny was he was a real jack of all trades. He lived at the old Northam Ranch House, which if you know where City Hall is across the street, if you know where the Memory Care Center, Sunrise is there, up on that hill where those palm trees are original. That's where the Northam Ranch was built in 1898. Okay, and when the Huntington Beach Company took it over, Sherman was the caretaker up there, and he loved cacti, he loved succulents, and he began planting a garden up there that became world renowned. It was a tourist attraction. It was on all the tourist maps. He was a meteorologist. He really was a very fascinating guy, and he was a historian as well. And so when you go up there, it really is something, because you see J. Sherman Denny, statistician for the Huntington Beach Company, editor of the Long Beach division of the Southern California Christian Endeavor paper. He did so many things up there, but what he was most proud of was this cactus garden that he tended to do, that they would have, world class, he won every ribbon you could win. People came from all over the country to visit this cactus garden. And if you go to the site today, that's the exact location. I've looked around thinking, could there be some remnant? Is there a cactus? I haven't found one that I think would go back. But if you've never been up to that park, I can't encourage it enough. It is one of the great hidden gems in Huntington Beach. When you walk up those stairs, and it's a public park, it's a city park, but so few people, just by show of hands, who's been up there? About half of you, good, good. It's when you're up there and you think about what took place up there, his cactus garden, but the Northam Ranch, the Huntington Beach Company, the trees are all original. You could have seen the ocean from there back then. There's always a nice little cool breeze up there. And that is the only picture I could find of him, really one of my kind of local history heroes. And he's got a meteorological clock there. But that's, I did want to share that with you. And before we leave tonight, I want to share the next kind of project I've been working on. Tony, where are you? Tony Haas is a wonderful local artist, and she did a book called Goodnight Surf City. Great book. And Tony took a history class of mine a couple of years ago, I guess, right? And it came up, I think, in that class. Wouldn't it be cool to have a children's history book of Huntington Beach? Kids, in third grade. That's when you begin to learn about local history. And so we put our heads together and our skill set together and created what's going to be the first children's history book in Huntington Beach. It's going to be out in 2 or 3 months, I guess, right? And you're so amazing to work with. And again, she does the artwork. She's a beautiful watercolorist. Every page is a piece of art. We've created a character named Henry, after Henry Huntington, who's going to walk these kids through the history. And in the book's going to include a kind of a local scavenger hunt, so families can go discover things around the city together. And there you can see her hand as she creates these really special pieces. So in terms of history, I'm super proud of this, and we've got bookmarks, if you'd like tonight, that you're happy to take a couple from, that will kind of show you what the book is about. And again, it should be available, we're thinking like March or so, right?
Late spring.
Late spring. Yeah, so we'll be back talking about that. But again, this to me has been a fun project, because when you love history and you love a city, I speak at a lot of schools, and kids, especially at that age, this is targeted, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, there is such a hunger, not just for good storytelling, but stories about where they come from and where they live. Because at that age, I think if you can get a kid engaged with history, what's going to happen? They're going to become very protective of their home. They're going to want to understand preservation. They're going to want to take care of these places and protect and preserve history, because they'll understand it matters. It's got gravity to it if the storytelling and the images provide something compelling. So that's what we've aimed to do. I'm super excited about that. And with that, I want to thank you for hanging in with me through, I think it was 158 slides, and it wasn't even 90. It's quicker than I thought it was going to be. But like I said, I get carried away with this stuff. Can I tell you one other little bit of little useless information? Going back to the beginning, I like to kind of close the circle. When I mentioned Casey McKeon's The Beef Palace, right? One of the first business, well, they're an original business in that shopping center that Frank Lloyd Wright Jr. designed. Victoria's is also original, and the Baskin Robbins is as well. That's the first Baskin Robbins in Orange County, if you didn't know. And the reason Frank Lloyd Wright Jr. wanted a tower there, a 92-foot tower, was because the 405 was reasonably new at that point, and he wanted people off the freeway to see Huntington Beach, to have a visual component. It would have been amazing had he built that. I have the one sketch that he did of it. I got it from his son, Eric Wright, who's also an architect. Eric's like in his 80s right now. But it was sort of based on a futuristic oil derrick to kind of as an homage to the city. But what's interesting about the Wright family, that gas station, that Arco, Frank Lloyd Wright Jr., again, Frank Lloyd Wright Jr., who went by Lloyd Wright, was a very well-known architect in his own right. I mean, again, coming off his father's name, it was hard to distinguish himself, but he did. He designed the first Hollywood Bowl, Wayfarer's Chapel, countless homes in Hollywood. But what's interesting with the Wright family is that gas station, that Arco, is unique. It's one of only 2 gas stations in the Wright family. His father, Frank Lloyd Wright, designed one, which is in Cloquet, Minnesota, a very famous landmark, very beautiful building. But look at that gas station as well at the Arco at the corner of Springdale and Warner. It's got very unique little angles. That whole center, if you look at it closely, you can see the textile boxes that the Wright family used. You can see the unique breezeway. You can see the kite Art Deco shapes on the side. Look at the Art Deco lights that are in there. It really is a very captivating spot. But the thing I like to share with people is that the Wright family was so unique. When Frank Lloyd Wright, the senior, went to Japan in 1915 to design the Imperial Hotel, which sadly is no longer there. He brought his other son, John, with him, who was kind of an apprentice. He was 15 years old at that time. And John was blown away by something his father did. Not just the design of the hotel, but the fact that his father designed the hotel on a series of interlocking beams so the hotel could roll in case of earthquake in Japan. And his son was like, that's, people see the hotel, but they're not going to see what my brilliant father designed underground. And it did save the hotel because, again, of the earthquake activity there. But John Wright, he brought that idea home. And he wasn't an architect like his brother Lloyd or his father, but he did add something to architecture. At about age 20, he couldn't get that concept out of his mind, that idea of interlocking beams. And he sat down and sketched out an idea, and he sold that idea to a toy company. And what he created based on what his father did was Lincoln Logs. So, again, it's not connected directly to that shopping center, but tangentially, you've got the Wright family in there. You've got all of these things that took place, all these people, all these personalities. So hopefully you heard a couple of things tonight that will resonate with you, that will most importantly help you look at your city through a historic lens. Whether it's the plane crash, whether it's the Pacific Beach Club, whether it's the health club at the corner of 8th and Coast Highway. These are places that matter. Even though they're not there anymore, they can still affect you, they can still make you feel, they can still make you think. So with that, thank you. I'll be outside doing some book things in the hallway here, and I really appreciate you coming tonight. Let's do it again soon.